All right. Looks like we are live. So good evening, everybody. This is the April 30th Mason City Schools Board of Education work session. We are beginning in our work session mode. Typically, this is a little different than our regular meetings because our regular meeting agendas typically have some actions and things that we take as a board. Tonight, there's nothing that we're going to be voting on, actions that we're going to be taking. This is a little bit different than what you might typically attend. These meetings are more for us to work through some different items and just have some discussion on those items. But we have a relatively light agenda tonight, so we are beginning now with our open session. We will eventually go into executive session, and following executive session, we will come out just to close the meeting somewhat ceremoniously in conjunction with what we're obligated to do under law. So with that, welcome everyone. And our first item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. And over our superintendent's shoulder there, we've got the flag for anybody who'd like to participate. So
can we do a quick roll call before we do the Pledge of Allegiance?
Yes, please, Sean.
Sorry, Mr. Galvin. Sorry about that.
Getting ahead of myself.
Mr. Galvin.
Here.
Mrs. Yingling.
Here. I'm here. Can you hear me? I'm here. Sorry.
Yep, I hear you.
Mr. Wise.
Here.
Mr. Steele.
Here.
Mrs. Batchy.
Try now, Desiree.
I'm here. I'm sorry, I'm on my iPad because my computer locked up.
All good. All right, is that everybody? Did we get everyone? All right. And if you would join me then. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
for which it stands,
Stands.
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
That is one component of our meetings that I will look forward to doing back in person with everybody. Audio delays and other things make it tough to sync everything up. All right. Well, we don't typically have opening comments at work sessions. We're usually just among one another and we get right into work. But given the unusual circumstances we have and the time between our last regular meeting and what will be our next regular meeting, we wanted to take a minute for anybody who is following along live or who might come along and find this meeting after the fact recorded, and take a minute to make some comments and remarks in light of our recent levy results. So opening it up to the rest of our board members, I'll start with Desiree.
Hi, thanks, Charles. And I know it's probably going to be a little bit repetitive because I know everyone on the board feels the same way, but I really wanted to recognize the levy committee, David Charpentier. I know I spoke to him personally, and he had taken so much time away from his family, given weekends and evenings to make sure our message was received by the community. And then all the folks I know that helped him lead that charge and make sure, that the voters were informed. I also wanted to take a minute and thank Sean and Jonathan, who held countless community conversations. They gave so much of themselves and their families. I'm sure suffered a little bit because they weren't home much. And that was getting our message out and making sure the voters understand, and they were very transparent and honest in their communication. And the last group I want to thank are the voters that are trusting us to be good stewards with their tax money, especially in this uncertain time. And the win wasn't a little win, it was big. So that shows the trust that they give us. So I do appreciate them trusting us with their tax dollars. And that's all. Thank you.
Thanks, Desiree. Matt?
Yeah, sorry, I tried to unmute, it wasn't working. Yeah, I could go on and on. I'll keep it brief. But we owe a lot of, countless people thank yous. We don't have enough time to name them all, but I want to start by saying that, I've said over and over again that this decision to place a levy on the ballot and how we got to where we are is one of the things that I'm the most proud of in my whole life, because we had been working to this moment for the entire time that I've been on the board. I know before that, previous boards, previous superintendents, and previous treasurers, people who were here before any of us, set this course, and we made tough decisions in the last 10 years to get to that point that we were at on March 17th, but actually now this past Tuesday. And it's just incredibly humbling to see people respond to that message in a positive way, because the message was that story of what we were all able to do as a community, as a district, as a staff, as families, to preserve the amazing quality that we have in Mason, in spite of all of the outside pressures and circumstances that don't give us much control over what we do or what resources we have to do them with. And so the support and the response is overwhelming, really, and it's humbling, and it's touching, and I couldn't be prouder to serve this community and to be a part of that conversation. And I do want to single out a couple people for thanks. Jonathan, Sean, Tracy, the story was the story, but the time that it took to engage so many different people in our community was not normal. That was not entirely our operating rhythm. And so the amount of the hours and hours that you spent away from your families, engaging in conversations with so many different people in our community, was just incredible. And we thank you. We wouldn't have been able to communicate that message and get through and have it resonate that clearly and that deeply without that time. And we can't thank you enough. But I will say that what's really great about that too is that even that was really just an extension of what you had already been doing. We just stepped up our game, right? The volume of conversations, or the number of conversations, and the number of hours spent in those conversations may have increased, but you've been working on these conversations, Jonathan, especially since you've been sitting in your seat. And so again, it's authentic leadership. It's leading with integrity. The story is the story. And I just am so proud that we kept that message, and we had reached a point where the decision was no longer ours, and we made the case to the public, and they resoundingly answered that they were in support. And so that's just incredible. And that support, I want to say, should signal, I hope that shows a bit of the gratitude and appreciation that our community has for the work that our staff does in our children's lives and our families' lives. That everything that we do is about the students' experience in the classroom and engaging with other human beings in their learning. And we wouldn't be able to do any of it. None of it would matter. We wouldn't have the quality. We wouldn't have the story we have without the work that they do. And so, and especially during this time, I think that people are seeing just how much it means to have our incredible people in our kids' lives. And so we thank our teachers, our staff, for everything that they did with the levy, and everything that they continue to do, just being them and doing the work that they do. So we should all be proud, and that we are. Our community should be proud. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. Kevin?
Yeah, thanks, Charles. I would just, I'd like to start by thanking the voter. That's where post-election always has to go. Our voters make up lots of different groups, teachers and parents and residents, people that connected to the school district and people that really aren't. And the outcome showed we had a broad mix of support. And I think that's the result of essentially 10 years of planning. And those 10 years were full of difficult decisions, transitions, keeping our eye on the ball, continuing to support our students and our staff, our teachers, navigating through those tough times too. And so I'm full of gratitude for that broad-based support, and very appreciative. I'd also like to thank certainly Jonathan, Sean, and Tracy for their very diligent work to get a very factual message out. You know, I don't know how other school districts do it, but we really didn't have to spend much time figuring out what the story was because we had been building it consistently for a long time. But you as communicators of that were did a great job. And I think the level of trust the voters showed is evident about how they felt about your communicating that message. I'd also like to thank the levy committee, maybe just a little behind the scenes. I don't know how people may perceive this, but I knew of some of the people that were on the levy committee, led the levy committee. But when we voted to put this on, it wasn't clear to anybody who would pick up our message and kind of run with it. And that's very humbling to have people who you really haven't worked with closely, listen, ask questions, demonstrate their professionalism. And the group of people that ended up leading the committee, supporting the levy, David and Casey and Kirsten and Lena, just a professional group, start to finish. And then they were surrounded by just some amazing people who, some of them with 15 years of experience who know how to run an election, and some who just showed up and said, I'm ready to work. And boy, did they work. And that part is very humbling because sometimes you wonder if people are listening, if they trust you, and when you hear those kind of people pick it up and run, it's certainly very confirming, and I'm most appreciative of that. The last group I'd like to just recognize is that, well, there's two more. One, our former board members. I sat next to Courtney Allen for 10 years, and Courtney's one of the best board members we've ever had. And her fingerprints are all over the success of this week's election results. So thank you, Courtney. In addition to Courtney, though, quite a few going back 2 decades, all of whom had this in mind at some point in the future. And we're just most appreciative as a community of their service and their commitment. And I personally appreciate learning from each of them and being able to carry this forward at this point. The last group I'd like to thank is the students and the teachers and the staff who through a pandemic changed how they teach and worked very hard to continue the message of the levy. But most importantly, focused on their students and have just done a terrific job in the last few weeks as we've navigated through these uncharted waters. So from the Wise family, from me, it's an absolute thank you to everybody. And now we just continue our journey, stay focused, and I'm looking forward to that. So thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Connie?
Yeah, I would like to also thank a large number of people that had a hand in a really monumental task with the levy. They served the district, as you said, Kevin, with a great deal of professionalism. And the one thing that struck me regarding the committee, keep in mind that all of these people were 100% volunteers. There was no pay involved, no compensation of any kind. And they really did dig their heels into the ground. They got to the meat of the issue, and they expressed it in a way throughout our community that was very personal for each individual. Our community is made up of many different kinds of families. We've got young families starting out, households with no kids in the school yet, but plan to. We've got empty nesters, and we've got everything in between. And I think the message that the levy committee diligently put out there was that every individual voter matters. This district belongs to the entire community, and it has value to every member of the community. And I very much appreciate the work that anyone working on the levy, and there were a lot of different people, the work they put forth to make it personal for each voter. And I think only under those circumstances do you even come close to the numbers that we were showing in this election. It was humbling. I am very grateful as well to the voters, our staff, our students who got involved. Just, it was a remarkable campaign season, and I take to heart very seriously what the committee did for our community, really for all of us, and how they did it. Jonathan and Sean, I know that you are at the helm of our district at this point, and you've not been through a lot of election and any levies for our district. And I would just like to thank you two personally. You two got your hands dirty and dug in again to the meat of the issue so that our community would be able to go to the polls or go to the mail with confidence and send their votes in to be counted. So I'm very, very grateful to all of the individuals. I could name many, but I'd be afraid I'd leave just as important ones out. So I do know it was a large group. I'm very, very grateful. And I hope that we continue to serve the community in the manner in which they deserve after this election. I think that our community has also proven to us that they're very engaged, and we're lucky to have that. That's all I had.
Thanks, Connie. I will also echo the thanks to the levy committee, the leadership, as well as everybody who, whatever the role was, whether you were passing out, flyers or making calls or knocking on doors, selling T-shirts, getting the message out, the hours and the time spent committed to telling the story of our district is just very much appreciated. We'll also thank my wife in particular, just because there were a lot of days and nights where she took on holding the fort down at home, so to speak, and I know everybody else's significant others are in the same boat there, where the time and the grind of investing in our community, sometimes it takes a toll at home. So I wanted to make those acknowledgments specifically at the outset. And then to the point of thanking the voters, I think that I don't know exactly how many votes were submitted via absentee early voting prior to March 17th, but I know the vast majority of the votes that were in the final tally came in after March 17th. And when you think about everything that transpired and went on, to have election day as we know it, for all intents and purposes, canceled, but to still have such a turnout after the fact, people didn't just stop and mail it in, so to speak, but they didn't just stop and turn off their attention spans. There were a lot of votes that came in after March 17th, and a lot of people remained engaged. They took in the landscape of our, not just our community, but of our world, with this pandemic that's going on and with the economic impact that that's having on everybody. And with all of that information still in hand, you know, and a lot of ballots coming in the last few days leading up to the April 28th cutoff, with all of that in hand and in mind, to get nearly 70% approval for this you know, amount of millage is really just, it speaks to the confidence and the validation of what the teachers, the staff, the community is doing here in Mason City Schools. And it's very humbling. You know, I don't have any doubt that had things been normal, with what we saw there, the margin might have even been higher. But to get as close to get as big a turnout and as big a support as we did, it's just very humbling for all of us on the board, and we can't express our gratitude enough. And we know going forward that that vote of confidence you know, with that comes great, you know, responsibility as we navigate the new circumstances of our community and our world. And we take that very seriously to be, you know, good stewards of public money. We know even with this levy passing that, you know, education and Mason City Schools is going to look a little different going forward. And we are already pivoting and preparing for that in the future. So again, on behalf of all the board, we thank, you know, our levy committee and our voters and our public for your vote of confidence. And we are excited to continue the work and get moving and going forward. With that, next item I've got on our agenda is community conversations. Jonathan?
Yeah, thanks, Charles, and thank you everyone for your comments. Just a couple of summary words of when I was listening to all of you as I transition to community conversations, because it will lead into this, but humbled, grateful, committed, trust, privilege, and good stewards of what people have trusted us with. And the commitment that we have as a leadership team, staff, and as a board to our community is just even more committed now than ever, just listening to our voters during this time. So just so grateful. Community conversations is one practical way that will play out as we move forward. You mentioned, a couple of you mentioned that this is work that has been going on for years leading up to this point. I think Matt mentioned that, Kevin mentioned that, the years leading up to this point to set us up, and the community conversations just in the last 2 years to lead us up to making sure that we are in alignment with our community. Those will continue on as we move into next year. We have already started to talk about what does next year look like. So if it's not an in-person community conversation, how do we begin holding and hosting virtual community conversations? So people, the voice of our public, those that are trusting us, whether you have students in our school or you're just a community member who is a partner with us, that you have a voice in the process. So our community conversations will continue. And I think, you know, right after a levy is a good time to remind people that this doesn't stop. It's something that we continue to go forward with. And so I just wanted to make sure everyone's understanding that. Next year, I think our rhythm of work, the first year was 40, the next year was 80. Next year, I don't know that I'm going to try to double that again. I think we're going to probably land somewhere in the 40, 50 range. I think that's a nice rhythm of work for family life and everything else. So but I just wanted to share that with the board and also with our community that might be tuning in. And then next topic, before we end this open session of the work session, and feel free to comment on any of this or ask questions, but I wanted to walk through, if it's okay with you, the process that we have gone through to set up our graduation planning, because it's a topic we've taken very seriously, and it's a topic that is so important to our seniors. So if I could just take a second to talk about what we do know with the board, just so everybody's knows what's going on. And if anybody that's watching that may not have a senior, you may not have received the email. So I thought it would be worth sharing with you, because we know that graduation ceremony is for our seniors and their families, but it's also for our community. It's a milestone and a moment in our community that we cheer on, and we send another almost 900 beautiful minds out into our society to do the things that they're doing now, but just in an adult kind of world. So I just want to share with you some of our planning, if that's okay. So we have, this started a while ago when we went into the virtual environment that we are now, the remote learning. We knew that there were a few topics that are going to be so important to us, and one was graduation. There are several, but that was the one that we really wanted to spend our energy on. We had plans and this is no exaggeration, Mr. Dodd and his team, because they would update me on a regular basis, had plans A, B, C, and D. And that was all happening in March, or whenever we went to this, the day that we canceled, that next week, we had those plans in place. And as everyone has watched, almost on a regular basis, the environment changes on us. And so it kept changing. And so we had dates saved at the Cintas Center in June, in July, and then they started closing those places. So they closed the Cintas Center. They closed it till July 31st. So then we're now on plan like N or something. So we kept adjusting and trying to get it right before we communicated a large plan to our families. Because what we also knew, because of the feedback, was that we had lots of families wanting direction because they have family either driving in or flying in, and they wanted to be thoughtful. And so today we communicated with all of our families what our plan is, and we've been working on it. Now, yesterday, over the last 3 days, things have changed in the state level. So we have made the adjustments, but we're just at the point now where we're like, this is our plan. And there may be some other things that we can add to the plan, but we also knew that we're a month out. So it's time for our families to know exactly what's going on. And we're really excited about what we do have. We want to recognize that it's not the experience that we all were looking forward to naturally when we started the school year, but the virtual option that's been advised from the state level. And we've worked closely with our local health department and our local health experts closely. I mean, I was on the phone with them 4 times today alone, just to make sure that they're okay with everything that we're planning. And so what we're doing with our virtual experience is it's not just virtual. So it's going to have a personal component to it. So if you're a graduate and you haven't seen the email yet, you're going to want to look through that. It has a lot of information in it, but there's opportunities on there that talk about when you pick up your cap and gown. And this year we've arranged it so you get to keep your cap and gown. That's the first time we've done that. Usually you rent your cap and gown and you return that, but we've arranged it so that you get to actually keep that, so that, and you'll understand why here in a little bit. So that's one thing. The next is we are going to be delivering the experience to you. So we're going to have 30 buses that have converted, that you've seen the birthday bus going around, but now it's going to turn into the graduation Comet Connector experience. And we will deploy those 30 buses out. And this has, again, been approved by our health department. So we'll do that safely. And we'll have a representative following the buses that will represent the board and administration. And then we'll be providing that handoff of the diploma on the Saturday before our graduation is currently, on the Friday, which is the 22nd of May. So if you're in the community, we'll advertise that. So the community members will see these graduation buses that for 5 hours, they'll be going around texting the family ahead of time, letting them know we're arriving at your place, and then giving that personal experience to our graduates and their family in a small group of 10 or less. They can take a photo op with the decorated graduation bus delivery, and that diploma will be delivered there, so that they have that there with their cap and gown in that experience, and they can celebrate that with their family safely instead of being completely online, because we've been online so much that we wanted to create some kind of experience for them. So that's happening on the Friday. Then on what we will do is on Sunday, and a lot of these details are still coming out. So we didn't share everything because it was already so full of information, but we will be doing a combination of a live event and pre-recorded event for our families. And there's a promo video that I believe Tracy's going to show here in just a second to promo what this is going to, just a little bit of a teaser to what this experience might look like. So Tracy, I'll turn it over if you're ready to show that. And as she's getting that video ready, you'll be able to see this promo, but we have a team that will be taping speeches and having all the components of graduation captured in a beautiful product at the end that we'll be able to share forever. So that's the teaser. And the nice thing about this graduation is that it will be open to our community. We will be playing that live with a live experience for our families on the 24th. And the 24th is a Sunday. That was our graduation that was scheduled at 2 o'clock. And then that will be followed by a community parade for our students. Now the parade will not have a traditional start and stop because we had to get that approved as well. And we don't want to create a place where people are gathering. However, during that time, people can go outside their homes and wave on and cheer on our graduates as they drive through our entire community afterwards and have that unifying feeling. Again, we recognize this does not at all, and we're not pretending that this is the exact same thing as a physical graduation in the Cintas Center. So we understand that. So recognizing that, but making the most of the moments that we do have as we finish strong together, and just know that we're committed to giving that in-person experience when we can. So we do have a plan that we have presented and shared with the governor and the team at the state level for them to review. That would be more of an in-person, what we're calling a safe, socially safe ceremony for our seniors that would be in person. If that does not get approved for right now, then we will hold the opportunity for our seniors in the 2020 class to graduate in the Cintas Center in 2021. So just so you know, we will give that traditional feel and make sure that happens. But for now, we wanted to make the most of the moment that we had. Thanks for listening through that. I just wanted to share that with our public when we had the chance.
Hey, Jonathan, if I could just share, I was looking as we were talking because we just sent this plan out to our seniors about 3 hours ago. I just checked the form for the Operation Diploma Delivery. That is our buses. We've had 193 seniors already sign up and say, count me in, I can't wait. And they're leaving sweet comments too. So while we know this season has been hard for so many families, this is such an important moment. And we're so thrilled that the high school team and really the whole district gets to come together with the board and still celebrate this class of 2020 who deserves this rite of passage. And we're going to do our very best to just make sure that they know how very proud of them we are and how we're still trying to create Mason moments even during this time.
And I do have to give credit to Tracy and to the team of people behind the scenes, the amount of hours that Mr. Dodd and Brandon Rompies have put into this, because when we go to plan something, people just have to appreciate during a pandemic the amount of details to keep people safe, even in an experience that we've created here. Everything we do has to be approved. If it's any in-person experience, it has to go through so much of the vetting process just to get that okayed. And when things are changing at the state level on sometimes a daily basis, you'll get a whole plan in place and then you have to tweak it. So I just give so much credit to the patience and leadership of Mr. Dodd, Brandon Rompies, the team, Tracy, and all the players that have been behind the scenes. So any questions about any of that or comments before we close that topic?
Jonathan, oh, go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, Jonathan, you've had a chance to run a few of your give me a little bit of background on how things have been progressing. And I just want to, I'd like to say to the community, I've heard a lot from a lot of people, a lot of good friends who have a son or daughter graduating this year. And I've heard people who have their own ideas. I've heard from people who really have great ideas. And I can assure you that the gentleman, at least on my screen in the corner, Mr. Cooper, is pulling out all the stops. He is, I'm not sure behind Dr. Amy at 2 o'clock, he's going to actually come out of the door, but he's close to being right up there, standing up with the people that are making these decisions on how to make sure we can have the most meaningful ceremony possible. So nobody needs to go to bed wondering whether or not everything is being considered and tried. Mr. Cooper is stepping up, leading the team he just recognized, who's looking at the details, but to make sure that we're represented and that those people in the health department and at the state level who are making blanket announcements, it seems daily, many times they change. I know they're doing their best. We're trying to navigate it, but we're not sitting back. We're stepping into that gap and trying to define a path forward that will most, that will represent our graduates in the best way we possibly can. So I appreciate his work, and I just want to reassure our community that everything is being done to try to craft that great experience.
And Kevin, I'll echo what Kevin just said. It doesn't necessarily help our cause that we are the largest high school in the state of Ohio. And so when Governor DeWine and the Board of Education come out and make decisions and guidance as to what schools across the state can do as far as graduation, as far as mass gatherings and things like that, it's hard for us to ignore what it is we're allowed to do and what we're not allowed to do. But as Kevin said, and as Jonathan alluded to, we have, the plan that you have in place that has been approved and that we know can go forward, we're excited about that, making the best of what we have. But we are also, appreciative of your efforts, Jonathan, as well as our local representatives, State Rep Zeltwanger and State Senator Wilson, who have been listening to us along the way, who've been advocating for our district and our constituents to, we obviously we want to do what is within the bounds of what's allowed, but we want to, come as close to that line as we can without putting anybody in harm's way and without, doing anything that will put us at odds with what the guidance is. And so we were really lucky to have creative leadership mapping out different ideas for graduation, running through different scenarios and things like that. And we are going to make sure that the class of 2020 is honored to the fullest extent that we're allowed to do it, and we're pushing those bounds.
Charles, if I may, I'd like to just add to that. I've been with this district and the board for a long time, and one of the most important things to me personally in executing this job is making each kid feel valued and respected. Not all the kids, but every kid. And this is how you know you've got the right people in place. When I'm just really impressed, Jonathan and Sean, what you have both been able to do in this district with this monumental global problem. I've seen nothing like it in all of my many years, never mind how many, but it really wells up the tears in my eyes to see the people that we're trusting our kids to every single day really care about every single kid. Thank you for doing all of that.
Well, thank you for allowing us to share that. And I will say, if parents, if you're tuning in at this point in time, thank you for your patience as we have been working just diligently behind the scenes. You've given us so many great ideas, and we've done our best to incorporate those, and we'll continue to build on your ideas as we get more and more guidance as we work with our health department. So thank you. That's all we had for graduation or community conversations at this time.
Great. Well, with that being said, the next item on our agenda for this evening is our executive session portion. And as I mentioned at the outset, at this time, we will vote to enter into executive session. I'll read the reasons why in a minute, but after we come out of executive session, we'll really just be convening the meeting this evening. So for the most part, if you are watching along live, there's not much more to pay attention to. There will be, I believe, an image up until we come back to convene the meeting. So you're obviously more than welcome to stay, but you've probably seen what's here to be seen so far. So thank you again to everybody who is invested in our schools and in our community. With that, I'd like to make a motion to enter into executive session to consider the, well, let me back up here. I'm going to entertain a motion if somebody would like to make one to consider, enter into executive session to consider the appointment, employment, dismissal, discipline, promotion, demotion, or compensation of a public employee or official, and to discuss details relative to the security arrangements and emergency response protocols for a public body or a public office, if disclosure of the matters discussed could reasonably be expected to jeopardize the security of the public body or public office. Is there somebody that would like to make that motion?
So moved.
I'll second.
All right, Sean?
Mr. Galvin,
Yes.
Mrs. Yingling,
Yes.
Mr. Wise,
Yes.
Mr. Steele,
Yes.
Mrs. Batchy. 5-0.
All right, thanks, everybody.
Are we just waiting on one to return? Yeah. I think everyone has arrived. I see everyone back. I think everyone's arrived back, so we can probably move forward on closing out.
Great.
I don't think Desiree is connected to audio, so she can't hear anybody. But that's still up to you.
I see a screen for Desiree. It looks muted.
I
All
think she's
right,
connected.
can you hear me now?
I can hear you, Desiree. Yeah, there we go. All right.
All right.
All right. So we have been in executive session and we need a motion to return to regular session. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? Okay. And now that we are back in regular session, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
None opposed?
Yes.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.